What way do you see things going today, Danni?
I think there is only one way that things are going to go today, and that there will be an additional 0.25 percentage point interest rate hike by the Bank of England. Now, it is going to be a difficult decision for the bank. And if you'd have asked me just a couple of days ago, markets were really on the fence, 50-50, as whether or not there would be an increase or whether or not the bank would hold fire. You've got to remember the Bank of England was the first to jump way back in December 2021 and started that interest rate hiking cycle. And there had been rumblings that maybe we were getting towards the end and maybe there would be a pause this time around. There's certainly been some dissent among members of the Monetary Policy Committee. But as you say, with inflation at 10.4%, that surprise jump, it just tells you that the Bank of England's job isn't done. It's got a target of 2% and it's nowhere near that.
I think used the phrase, it's not an inevitability that inflation will come down when those shock figures came out. What are the implications, of raising interest rates? Why is there sort of a jitteriness about it, given what's happened in the last few weeks with the banking system?
Because if you raise interest rates, you make it more expensive to borrow money. And it also means that a lot of the bonds that our banks hold are worth less. Now, that's not an issue with those bonds if those banks don't need to sell them. And we've been told by regulators, by central banks and by high street banks themselves that our banking system is secure. And certainly there's no indication that the issues that we've seen in a number of smaller banks in the United States and Credit Suisse, which has been having problems for a number of years, there's no indication that that will spill over into the wider banking system. But we do know that banks are now going to potentially be more cautious, and that means they won't lend. They won't want to take as much risk when it comes to lending. And that in itself impacts the economy. It slows things down, which of course is what the Bank of England is trying to do anyway. So perhaps what's happening in the banking sector will actually do some of the work that the Bank of England has been trying to do. However, there have been concerns that it will cause further destabilisation. But I do think at the moment the Bank of England has to demonstrate that it is really serious about bringing prices down, because for ordinary people, those high prices are just eye-watering at the moment. They're causing a huge amount of harm. When you go shopping, you're having to pay a little bit more every time, and a lot of budgets just can't stretch any further.
Yeah, sometimes a big bit more every time as well. But Danni, when you're talking about spending money or lending money from the banks, does it matter what they lend money on? For instance, is there a difference between me putting a conservatory on the back of my house and someone hiring 2 more staff for an engineering company?
If you're spending money on putting a conservatory behind your house, then you are paying somebody's wages to put that conservatory behind your house. You're paying for someone to build that conservatory, for the raw materials to be gathered. So no, where the money is spent doesn't really make a difference. What the Bank of England is trying to do is effectively take some money out of the system to cool things down. So that is why we do know that these interest rate hikes come with a degree of pain, because it does mean the economy is slowing down. That said, what the Bank of England doesn't want to do is completely stall the engine entirely. It does still want the economy to keep ticking over just a little bit, because if that doesn't happen, of course, then we fall into recession. And what has happened with the banking situation over the last few weeks has certainly created more of a possibility that a recession might be round the corner, when, of course, at the moment, it has looked like the UK has escaped recession.